Osama bin Laden was born in 1957 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, into a wealthy and influential family. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, was a successful construction magnate whose company worked closely with the Saudi government. Osama was one of many children from a large extended family, and he grew up in relative privilege with access to education and resources unavailable to most people in the region at the time. During his youth, Saudi Arabia was undergoing major social and political changes. Osama received a religious upbringing that emphasized conservative interpretations of Islam, which were common in the country. He later studied economics and public administration at King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah. Some accounts suggest he was a quiet student, not particularly remarkable academically, but deeply interested in religious and political discussions. The turning point in his early life came in 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. This event had a significant impact across the Muslim world. Many viewed the conflict as a defensive struggle against a foreign occupation. Osama became involved in efforts to support Afghan fighters, initially through fundraising and logistical assistance rather than direct combat. At this stage, he was not yet a global figure. He operated largely behind the scenes, using family connections and financial resources to help channel money and supplies. These activities were not illegal at the time and were supported by various regional and international actors who opposed Soviet expansion during the Cold War. This period marked the beginning of his transformation from a private individual into a politically motivated actor. However, his role remained limited and secondary, and his public profile was still largely unknown outside certain circles. After the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1989, the geopolitical landscape changed dramatically. The conflict that had united various groups began to fragment. Osama bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia, where he became increasingly critical of the Saudi government, particularly after it allowed foreign troops to be stationed in the country during the Gulf War of 1990 to 1991. This criticism led to growing tension with Saudi authorities. Eventually, his passport was revoked, and he left the country. He relocated first to Pakistan and later to Sudan, where he invested in businesses and infrastructure projects. During this time, he began building networks that extended beyond charitable and logistical support. In the early 1990s, Osama bin Laden's ideology became more rigid and confrontational. He publicly framed global politics in stark moral terms and positioned himself as an opponent of Western influence in the Middle East. His statements increasingly rejected compromise and emphasized confrontation. By the mid-1990s, international attention toward him began to increase. Several governments accused him of financing and supporting violent activities, though he often denied direct involvement. These accusations led to diplomatic pressure on Sudan, which eventually expelled him in 1996. He then returned to Afghanistan, which at the time was controlled by the Taliban. There, he found a permissive environment where he could operate with relative freedom. His presence in Afghanistan marked a significant escalation in both his visibility and his ambitions. From Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden became an increasingly prominent figure in international security discussions. He released recorded messages and interviews in which he articulated his worldview and justified his opposition to the United States and its allies. These communications were widely circulated by global media. In 1998, He was publicly linked by U.S. authorities to attacks on American embassies in East Africa. This marked the point at which he became a globally recognized figure. The United States issued indictments and offered rewards for information leading to his capture. Following the attacks of September 11, 2001, Osama bin Laden was identified by U.S. officials as the primary individual responsible. While he did not immediately claim responsibility, later recordings acknowledged his role. This event fundamentally altered international politics and security policies. A U.S.-led military intervention in Afghanistan followed, aimed at dismantling the networks associated with him and removing the Taliban from power. Osama bin Laden escaped initial capture and went into hiding. For years, his exact location remained unknown, despite extensive intelligence efforts. During this period, he appeared sporadically in video and audio recordings. These messages diminished over time, and his operational influence reportedly declined as international pressure increased and his networks were disrupted. In his final years, Osama bin Laden lived in increasing isolation. Contrary to earlier assumptions, he was not hiding in remote mountains, but was eventually found in a residential compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. He maintained strict communication limitations and relied on trusted couriers rather than electronic devices. On May 2, 2011, U.S. forces conducted a covert operation that resulted in his death. The operation was carried out without prior public disclosure and concluded a nearly decade-long international search. His death was officially confirmed by the U.S. government shortly afterward. Following the operation, global reactions were mixed. Many governments viewed the event as a significant moment in counterterrorism efforts, while others raised legal and ethical questions. Regardless of perspective, his death marked the end of a chapter that had shaped global security policy for years. Osama bin Laden's legacy remains deeply controversial. He is widely regarded as a figure whose actions contributed to immense human suffering and long-term instability. Today, his life is studied primarily as a case example of radicalization, geopolitical conflict, and the consequences of extremism. His story continues to be analyzed not to elevate the individual, but to better understand the conditions and decisions that led to one of the most consequential security challenges of the modern era.